These are my top tips for AS Exam Paper 2, Section B, which focuses on comparing Blake's poetry from Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. So, question paper 2 is worth 50% of your overall grade for AS. It's an hour and a half long. The other section that comes before this one is Gatsby, if you're doing Gatsby text, but section A is on your novel, and it's worth 25 marks altogether. You are being assessed for all 4 of the analysis criteria, however, because you are comparing poems in this essay question. Okay, so what do you need to know about the question? Well, here's an example. As with section A, you have 45 minutes. You're going to be comparing in this one, so you need to make sure that you're making links between the poems and how they're presented. It's an interesting question because you're not being asked to look for a theme or a point of view. You're actually being asked to look at how Blake uses language. There, you should just read the word words. How he uses words and techniques in these 2 poems. So essentially, what you're being asked to do is comment on Blake's style. How does Blake's style of writing, something we would expect to see in all his poems, come out in these 2 poems in particular? You get 2 poems, named poems to focus on. And you'll need to obviously make relevant links to relevant context to support your analysis. And you get a copy of both poems, so you'll be able to annotate your poems in the exam, which gives you a huge amount of opportunity for planning in detail. One thing you should be aware of, though, while this example takes a poem from Innocence and one from Experience, and they're actually paired poems that show opposites of something or other, you could actually get 2 poems from Songs of Innocence or 2 poems from Songs of Experience, and the poems might not be paired at all. So you could get Holy Thursday and The Lamb as your example, which don't necessarily on the surface seem to have much in common, which is why the focus should be on what techniques he uses and what effect they have on the reader when you're reading the poem in conveying its message. Okay, so that's why you need to be really careful about how you think about this question. Okay, I'm sure by now you've studied enough Blake that you could think, oh, well, I know if I read a Blake poem, I'm going to see this, this, and this. So those are the things that we're after you to tease out when you're comparing in this exam. Okay, so to broaden this idea again, when we're talking about Blake's style, what language and poetic techniques he commonly uses, that means what devices does he often use, what themes does he commonly talk about, what imagery do you expect to see? Okay. Knowing this in advance is probably the easiest way to make comparisons between any 2 poems that you're going to study in this unit. So if you know that he always uses religious imagery, that's what you can look for in both of these poems. If you know he uses lots of nature imagery, lots of pastoral imagery, then you know that that's what you can look for in these 2 poems, and then compare. Well, he uses the pastoral imagery here to do this, but he uses the pastoral imagery in this one to do that. So you can look at how, again, we're comparing how he uses something the same, so pastoral imagery, but how he does it differently in both poems to present a different idea. Okay, so how would we do this? First things first, we would annotate both poems for any matching devices, themes, and imagery. So can you find 2 examples of alliteration? Can you find 2 examples of interrogatives? Can you find 2 examples of nature imagery? Can you find 2 examples of religious imagery? Can you find 2 references to repetition? All of those things. What themes? These poems happen to share a theme. I'm talking about creation and God, and who's responsible for the creation of the good and the evil. Or they could use similar concepts of imagery. Completely up to you to find where the matches are. The other thing you should do is summarize for yourself in a sentence what the key message or idea behind each poem is. What was Blake really talking about? Because that will also then help you talk about what each device that you try to analyze, what it's actually doing for the poem, how it makes the poem work. Then, if you've got time, a comparison table of how Blake's style conveys the message in his poems, in these 2 poems that you've been given in your exam. So let's have a look at what we can dredge out of these 2. So plenty to talk about. Both poems have a lot of pastoral and natural imagery. Both poems contain religious imagery. Both poems use archaic lexis all the way through. Both poems have examples of interrogative tone. However, the questioning is clearly rhetorical in The Tiger, whereas in The Lamb, it's a lot more passive. It doesn't even use question marks, but it's clearly a question. There's oral imagery, sound imagery in both poems. You can hear the dreaded heartbeat in the tiger, but you can hear the beautiful singing and the rejoicing in the vales in the lamb. Repetition is present in both. It's very heavy in the lamb, not so heavy in the tiger. Why do you think they're different? What does the lamb sound more like? What does the tiger sound more like? Which one's more hymnal and pleasant with its repetition? Which one is more direct and questioning? And finally, obviously, we're going to find references to God and nature. That's what Blake tends to write about. But here, specifically, both of these poems are talking about creation. Who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Who gave thee life? And what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Who made you, tiger, as well? And this one down the bottom here. Did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Asking the question, not only who made you, but did the person who made such a terrible beast also make such a pleasant and innocent one? And obviously you would note that the lamb there has a capital L, which makes it probably a representation of Jesus. So very, very interesting in that sense. Okay, so once you've identified a range of devices that both poems share, you would then be picking the 3 devices you think best sum up each poem, and then comparing how they do that. So in poem A, this poem uses religious imagery to do this, to show this message, but in poem B, it uses the religious imagery to do this and show this tone. So that's how you would go about doing your comparisons. Aim for 3 comparisons, but even 2 good quality comparative paragraphs will still compare 6 or 7 different quotes. So you could absolutely survive on 2 paragraphs, 2 comparative paragraphs, knowing how long they are. Don't forget to compare all the way through the second half of each paragraph. Once you've established your key idea in the first poem, you should compare as you go when you're talking about the second poem to get more comparative marks. Remember, even though you've only got 30 minutes, actually that's a really long time if you've done a really detailed plan, because all you're doing then is writing out your plan again, but adding a bit more information. Okay, and as always, you can always go back, pause the video and have a look at that first example and write a couple of comparison paragraphs to see how you get on. But you can also have a crack at this one, a separate question. So same question, different poems, follow the instructions, have a go, see what you can find on your own. As always, good luck.